Hey, hey, Mystic Magic podcasters. We are in for a very special show today because today my guest is Dr. Amit Goswami. He's a theoretical nuclear physicist. He has been teaching physics for many years. After he experienced some distress and frustration in the Newtonian world, he turned his research interest to quantum cosmology and quantum measurements and started using the applications to the mind body problem. He was one of the featured scientists in the What the Bleep Do We Know? He's been in the Dalai Lama Renaissance. And he's also done another show that was on UFO TV called Bigger Questions with a number of other physicists. He's originally from India. He received his PhD from the University of Calcutta in 64, and from where he moved to the United States early in his career. He's been fully retired as a faculty member of the University of Calcutta. He's now engaged in far-reaching international speaking engagements, and he teaches pretty regularly at the Holmes Institute, which is where I met him. He's my former teacher and current teacher. He's been involved in so many things, from the Philosophical Research University to the Institute of Noetic Sciences. He's a scholar who's in high demand. So it is truly a blessing to have him here with us today. There is probably another 20 minutes of his bio that I could give you, but suffice it to say that this is going to be a juicy show. Welcome, Dr. Goswami, to Mystic Magic. I wanted to start off by saying you drilled into us so deeply that consciousness is the ground of all being. And I would like for our listeners to know what that means. You know, I know you're a theoretical physician, as you identify, and there's been other iterations like nuclear physicists to quantum physicists. Tell me how this all fits in terms of your worldview.
Well, consciousness as the ground of all being is a statement which initially is very puzzling to people, because the current view of many scientists, if not most, is that matter makes up everything. In other words, human beings are mechanical, material, and there is no difference between life and non-life, except living beings are big molecules, but molecular size should not make any difference to whether we have consciousness or not. So in this milieu, in this culture, to speak of consciousness is itself a subject which is assumed to be a brain science, something about the brain that makes it conscious somehow. Of course, brain cannot be conscious in the wildest of imagination, because brain is an object, and consciousness means that we talk about us. We are experiencing the object. We are experiencer. We have a self. We are separate from our environment. We experience ourselves to be separate. We don't experience ourselves to be part of the material world. We see the material world clearly apart from us. They're different. They're rocks that we cannot communicate with them. And yet, scientists would say that, no, well, this is not what it seems to be. So there is a lot of assumption there. And this is the assumption that somehow scientists have bought into, because they have an advantage. They know how to use this science, so they can predict and control on the basis of this science. And this is what they want, predict and control, because you know how the society is going. There's a big division between scientists and non-scientists. One political party supports science, the other political party tries to sabotage science with all they could because they support religion or other things, other values. So this is the situation in which we talk about consciousness at the ground of being on what basis? Quantum physics. Quantum physics came to us as a surprise because it showed that objects are not really objects until we look at them, objects of possibilities. However strange that may seem to be, objects of possibilities. Well, they are a wave of possibility. They are like an electron is a wave of possibility, meaning that it has only possible positions, which means that it's not an object yet in concrete reality where it has to have a definite position, but it's a possibility object with possible position. Yes. Where does that object reside? It resides in consciousness. So consciousness can choose one of the possibilities which can become actuality so that we see an electron at a given place. Now, yes, with all this explanation, I hope it is making some sense. Otherwise, it's very clear because it sounds like spiritual.
I'm going to ask you really, before you used to think of spirituality as a convenience, what changed?
Well, what happened to me personally was that I was very dissatisfied with the way we did science, and I did nuclear physics. It uses quantum physics, but only in a very practical way of calculating stuff that doesn't matter in our life, even remotely. Right. So I got tired of how can science, an entire field of enterprise that dominates our culture, how can that be totally devoid of what human life is about? Our experiences, love, beauty, justice. These are the things we are interested in. We are not interested in really how molecules and atoms, they do their thing, little things in their structure that can be predicted and controlled. We are not really interested in that. Yes, it has practical applications to be sure. It can lead to technology. But the point is that we don't live that technology. We take advantage of the technology, but we don't want to live there. We do not live there. So where we live, is there physics in there? I was convinced that there is physics in there too, because physics is the fundamental science of everything. So that belief led to me an analysis of quantum measurement, and that led to this big discovery of a whole science paradigm.
So what is this connection between science and religion to you?
So then, since consciousness is the ground of both science and religion, because religions have been growing from the original spiritual experiences that Jesus had, that Buddha had, that Upanishads, the rishis of the Upanishads had, that the rishis of the Kabbalah had. Rishi is a word meaning that people who know the truth. So all these people in different religions, I'm not excluding anything. Right. Sufis of Islam, they're great wisdom teachers too. And all these people have been saying that consciousness is where we must begin. That's the ground. And quantum physics finally has to support it, because otherwise it has these unsolved paradoxes which nobody can solve, no way. Measurement paradox cannot be solved by assuming that brain does it, because brain is just an object. Measurement means not only the object comes about, but we, the experiencer, comes about in the brain simultaneously as the object comes about.
That's like the observer effect, right?
Observer effect, exactly. So you as a non-scientist know more than scientists would admit. A scientist would never admit that observer effect has any effect on anything in the world, because observer is a human beings have no effect on the world, just mechanical machine with maybe some sort of experiences that come in some sort of way. This is their model. Now, how do you expect people to believe this model? So is there any wonder that people don't believe science anymore? Science has lost all credibility because of this materialist prejudice, dogma.
Well, what do you think is the real place where consciousness is? Is it in the heart or in the head?
Well, consciousness exists in both places. This is another dichotomy
Yes.
that plays on us, and we cannot be blamed because the dichotomy is built into the basic structure of the brain and basic structure of the body. So what happens in the brain is that women's brain is, okay, let me go back a little. There is a part of the brain which is called amygdala. It is the source of negative emotions. All of your negative emotions, anger, jealousy, fear, all that is built into the brain called the amygdala, that brain organ, and in the form of brain circuits. So where is amygdala connected? With women, it's connected to the left brain, which is conscious in women. So women have no way of avoiding these emotions. And in general, that has a good aspect too. They can also experience positive emotions, which comes from the body, the heart and the navel, those regions, and other regions too. So women, in effect, become interested in emotions because it is very different than thinking. And it is also more accessible to quantum characteristics. And one characteristic is very interesting. It is called non-locality. People can directly connect with each other through non-locality quantum effect, which means no signal is needed. You don't have to speak, I don't have to speak, and we feel each other. And women have this capacity, and they develop this capacity from childhood, and all women have them, although more recently some women are becoming too intellectual and losing it. But you have it. I can feel you. So this is the thing. And men, on the other hand, the amygdala is connected to the right brain, which is unconscious. And so men can easily suppress negative emotions. Although the right brain is connected to the left brain, so eventually negative emotions cannot be avoided by the male either. But they get a little bit of time. In that time, they can suppress it. And that, of course, is encouraged by society as well, because they have to do with the actor. They have to fight with the world, competitive world, etc., the image you have of the world. And that's how male-female difference develops.
Okay. So do you think we're living in a matrix?
Yeah, well, it is a very attractive idea that it is all a conspiracy, this negative emotions and so forth. Somebody is controlling it. Somebody has put the circuits in our brain, and we are not in control. But you know, this is a bad theory overall, because the point is that it is not just the negative. We also have a lot of positive if we cultivate them. And Matrix completely ignores that. It's not an evil conspiracy. Not everything is. Although it sure seems like it.
So do you think COVID is a wave? Do you think it's a quantum object?
What is the wave?
COVID.
Yeah, quantum is a wave. A quantum, which is an elementary particle of energy and matter, that's the way it was originally defined. But mind you, originally, and now the concept is very different. A quantum is characterized by being a wave. So all these quantum objects, be it an elementary particle of matter of energy, that's for material, be it of the mind or vital energy. There we don't have the concept of discrete particles because they cannot be reduced. But we still have the concept of quantum wave of possibility. That part is the same for all quantum objects. It's always an object of possibility.
Well, I would like
Object
for scientists to be able to
Yeah,
to
sorry,
see where this wave is going. I'm sorry.
no,
I
that's
just,
okay.
I had an impulsive response to say I would like for scientists to find out where this wave is heading.
Right.
But, you know, the presumption is that we are one, and COVID has actually helped us to get that. How is this proven scientifically?
That concept of non-locality that I told you, that is the key concept. That non-local connection without signals. What does that mean? If you and I do not need a signal to communicate, what does it really mean? If you think about it, I can only communicate with myself without signal. So what has happened is that I have included you within my expanded self. Myself somehow is not what it seems to be, individualized and confined to my body brain, but instead it is the ground of all being. And therefore, in principle, it can include all other human beings, in fact, all sentient beings. But we do not wake up to that non-locality, and this is what creates the confusion. So experiment can prove non-locality? Yes, they can prove non-locality because they can let two people communicate through non-locality and then see that no signal was exchanged. They can prove that no signal could possibly have been exchanged between the people who are so non-locally communicating. And this has been done for brains. We now have brain transfer potential. One person's electrical activity is measured in a EEG machine connected with his brain while he's seeing a series of light flashes. The other person doesn't see any light flashes. His brain does not have any special activity. And still, when the EEG is connected to his brain, because he is connected with the other, his brain picks up this electrical activity from the other brain without any signal anyways, which can be measured in the EEG, is measured in the EEG, called the transfer potential. Imagine this, verified by 24 experiments. So nobody can debate that this is not real.
Right. So where do you think the multiverse comes into play? Are there like 11 universes? I mean, how many universes are there?
Well, multiverse is a concept. Multiverse actually can be used as a concept in quantum conceptualization of cosmology. In quantum cosmology, the universe itself, at least originally, when we did not collapse it by observing it, when the Big Bang happened at that time, the universe must have been a bunch of possibilities, bunch of baby universes. Just possibility, no actual universe. And then when sentient beings came along, their observation created the actual manifestation of the universe, going backward in time. This is a complex concept called delayed choice. But in my books, I have explained it. It's not the time to go through in this show because that will take up the rest of your
Right. We'll talk about some of your books, you know, toward the end. But I kind of wanted to touch into that because I get a real sense that there are other dimensions that I go to that I can't quantify or say that there's any substance in terms of being able to explain it. But there is substance in terms of the communication. So I wanted to get that question in there.
Not much substance in the concept of multiverse, although it can be conceptualized, but it's not science fully because we can never verify it. And another universe, by definition, is not connectable to this universe. So science can never verify, only postulate the existence of such universe, but science cannot be just a theory. Unless it is verified, it's not really science. Just as unless there is a theory to explain data, it is not science either. So science needs both theory and experimental data to verify. If it is not verifiable idea, then it is not science. So we should keep away as far as possible from concepts that we cannot verify.
So you have chosen to move into the topic of reincarnation. That was the other course that I took with you when you were working with physics of the soul. And I always think of Elvis Left the Building when I think of your definition of when does death occur. And say a little bit about that and what you think reincarnation is and the relationship between the two.
Reincarnation is a very important phenomenon during our development. And therefore, the topic of reincarnation, also it is very important for older people to know that they can face death without fear. They are not going to go away. There is a part of them that's going to survive, and not survive in a Hollywood kind of way either, but survive with potency and going to be reborn. And they have more work to do on this side of the world. And so they can take heart from it. Death is like a long sleep. It's not the end of it. So in both ends, and during our developmental years as children, and as our golden years, however you call it, it is important. So how does it happen? It happens because the propensities, the habit patterns that we develop, it turns out they're a modification of the quantum mechanics of the person. And therefore is not part of the brain. It's not part of the brain memory. What we learn is not in the brain. What we learn is something that is modification of some basic equation of movement that we have of the brain. And this is why that learning part is what we call non-local memory. It's a part of the structure, the lawful structure of the human being, the laws behind the human being, that laws that operate the personality of a human being. You see? So the laws are not in the brain. Like the laws of a falling body, I'm picking up a hat, if I drop it, but it falls, but the gravity law is not in the hat. Gravity law is built into the science behind the hat falling. So in the same way, what we develop as our character traits and habit patterns, our learning, like you learn a bicycle, like you learn to speak, those things are not part of the brain, the learning capacity. What you learn is part of the brain, but not the capacity to learn. This is why we never forget. Once we learn bike riding, we don't forget. Once we learn language, we don't forget. So these things become innate part of ourselves because they are non-local memory. And then so innate that even when we die, that's the part that really survives. And that's the part that is inherited by a future baby who will then be called my reincarnation in another physical one.
Right.
And you know what? All the parts of this theory has been verified by empirical data, believe it or not. But people, scientists are such wonderful creatures, and not everybody has the materialist prejudice. So they have painstakingly gone and verified the phenomenon of reincarnation.
Now, I know you're doing an event in a few weeks on this whole topic. Do you want to say a little bit about that event?
Yes, yes. Valentin Ornisar, my collaborator, and I are going to speak on the subject of death in a sort of workshopping, and talk about death, reincarnation, both. Because, you know, death is scary to some people, and really one should not be scared. Death can be a very joyful moment, in fact.
Right.
What you find empirically, you know, near a deathbed, things become very peaceful. And this is It's an amazing experience. So I've heard, I have never been near a deathbed actually. That is one experience I have missed. But what I have heard from many people, it can be very peaceful and very full of connectivity. You become connected. Even by present at a deathbed, you become connected.
Yeah.
So the thing to do for dying is to pray, intend to be conscious at the moment of death. If you can consciously participate in that peace that pervades due to quantum non-locality, then you become aware of so many aspects of things that fear of death forever disappears, etc., etc.
Wonderful. Well, I know that your book, Physics of the Soul, the Quantum Book of Living, Dying, and Reincarnation and Immortality is a rich book, and I highly recommend it. Some of your other books are The Visionary Window that you wrote with Deepak Chopra, A Quantum Physicist's Guide to Enlightenment. You got a book called Quantum Mechanics, another one called The Quantum Doctor, another one called God is Not Dead, What Quantum Physics Tells Us About Our Origins and How We Should Live, one called Creative Evolution, many articles, many audio
Also, some recent books,
references.
if you don't mind, can I mention some of the recent
Oh,
books?
yes. Yes.
One is the Everything Answer book. One is Quantum Economics, solves the economic paradigm under consciousness. And then very recently with Valentina Ornisar, I have written Quantum Spirituality, integrates science and spirituality fully and shows the way spirituality should go, a form of worldly spirituality, spirituality for worldly people. And very importantly,
It
a
is
book on
important.
quantum brain. And we just finished a book called Quantum Integrative Medicine. I tell you, Celeste, we are very proud of this book. This book is going to change the healing professions forever.
Wow.
We have amazingly succeeded in developing what people have been calling holistic medicine or integrative medicine, but nobody has really succeeded. I made an early attempt in the quantum doctor, but I too did not succeed. There was many answers that could not have gotten. They're dangling, questions are dangling. But all of that now, with some new data, we were able to solve. And this is just amazing. The lessons you get and the simple message that you get, which you can then use to stay healthy, you know, if this is a big if, it may be forever in the sense that you don't age, although you will die eventually. I do believe that immortality is not possible because it's not needed. We reincarnate. So why should immortality be part of the science? Physical immortality. But you certainly could have an ageless body till you die. There's no reason scientists find if we can correct the software, yes, software goes all right, they're not connected to hardware anymore, hardware does deteriorate, cells do die, and therefore hardware has to deteriorate, even though a little bit maybe for healthy bodies, but software and hardware become disconnected. And so we have continuously have to renew the software. If we develop that ability, how to renew the software, how to improve the software as we live, which we have found the key, how to do that. And then you cannot age, except for the little bit of that deterioration that comes with cell death. You can live fully healthy, fully conscious, fully active till you die. Wouldn't that be just simply amazing thing for every human to achieve? Look at today.
I'm excited.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm excited hearing about it. Yeah.
Me too. I really feel anytime I think about what we have been able to accomplish, I get goosebumps all over my body. It is really quite amazing.
Right. Well, here's a question I ask all of my Mystic Magic guests. Can you think of a mystical moment that you had that really changed you?
Well, there have been three such very big moments, actually four such very big moments. The first one took place in 1973 when I was spending a day at a nuclear physics conference. I was still a nuclear physicist. And for no reason at all, I was one of the speakers, but I was not happy with my speech. Instead, I became jealous of every other speakers because I felt that they're doing a better job, they're getting better reception, and nobody is paying any attention to me, but all attention is going to others. In other words, I'm just jealous, jealous, jealous. I have never been a particularly jealous person. That jealousy was obviously there. I suppressed it very well, and it just came out that day. And it did me good because that in the evening, about 1 o'clock in the morning, I had an insight. And the insight was, why do I live this way? I don't have to. The insight was that I can change. I can, in fact, synchronize, make my thinking, living, and livelihood congruent with each other so that this unhappiness that is entirely coming from the disconnect that I had from basically how I live and what I do with most of my time. The fact is that I was in my heart very much wanting to love my family, love my wife, love my children. And what I actually did was slave for doing nuclear physics for the advancement of my career for 12, 14 hours a day. And this is the story of not only just me, every professional in the world today. They all work very hard. Some of them make a lot of money working very hard, but they don't get to enjoy the money because they are always working. You cannot think of life without your work. So family doesn't get you, love doesn't get you, wife doesn't get you, your friends don't get you. It's all work, work, work. And I was sick and tired of that life. Why should life and physics so disconnected? That opened my desire to find what I tentatively called happy physics. But it took me years and years of research to find that. And in between these experiences of, I meditated, started meditating. Meditation led to me a big, big experience that in Sanskrit is called samadhi. In transpersonal psychology, it's called the transpersonal experience. Some people glamorize such experiences as enlightenment, but I didn't have that. I don't call it enlightenment because I didn't change. The experience was huge. I really saw, I really felt oneness of everything. But the amazing thing is that the transformation that I can love everyone because they are one with me stayed only 2 days. After that, it tapered off. After that, I was back to my selfish being and could not love even my wife beyond my selfish interest. So I said, what is this? This cannot be enlightenment, obviously. So my entire view of spirituality underwent a radical change, and that eventually led to other discoveries that made it clear of why enlightenment is not so easy. You can have the experience, certainly quantum physics allows it, it's called quantum leap of insight, but you have to then implement the insight in your life. So that insight that I had in 1973, that you really have to integrate your life with what you do and how you think and how you live, that ended up to be the most fruitful insight that I ever had. That's the basic insight. That's the basic insight that is now the insight of every one of ideas of quantum science. Integrate, integrate, integrate. We call it the exploring wholeness.
Yes, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I knew there had to be some wonderful story behind this. And I appreciate that. I appreciate you. You're a genius, not only in the mind, but of the heart. And so I'm just
I
really
don't know
grateful
much.
that.
I avoid such terms because they create misconception. You know, genius is supposed to be these super duper astral beings. I'm not that at all. I live in a very intuitive way and connected way, and avoid that path of being a intellectual genius who can figure things out in rational mathematical terms. I don't believe in that much because the answers you get to problems are mechanical. You don't get answers to human problems that way. For human problems, you need to love, you need to intuit, you need to open up and open up to creativity, open up to intuition.
Well, I appreciate your big heart that brought you here today and your generosity of spirit and all the work that you do to help us understand more about who we are. Thank you so much for coming to Mystic Magic.
Thank you, Celeste. I enjoyed the interview as much as you did, I hope.
Yes, great. This is Mystic Magic, exploring our spirit to understand our lives.